No one remembered when the war truly began, only that it never seemed to end. The frontier world of Karath burned quietly under distant stars, its cities reduced to broken steel and drifting ash. Armies had come and gone, banners raised and shattered, until even hope felt like a rumor people once believed. On the edge of that ruined world, one human still fought. His name was Elias Ward, though no one called it anymore. He had no unit, no command, and no promise of rescue. He wore patched armor scavenged from fallen allies and enemies alike, marked with scars that told stories he never shared. Elias fought not for victory, but for delay. Each hour he held the line meant another transport escaping orbit, another group of civilians slipping away from the invasion. He never watched them leave. He simply trusted that someone somewhere still cared enough to run. The enemy believed the sector abandoned. Their scanners showed only wreckage and fading heat signatures. What they did not expect was a single human standing among the ruins, weapon raised, eyes steady, refusing to disappear. Every step Elias took hurt. His body was exhausted beyond pain, existing in a dull, distant ache. Still, when the ground shook with the approach of armored walkers, he did not retreat. He adjusted his grip and waited. He had learned long ago that fear wasted energy. The first walker fell to a precise strike at its exposed joint. The explosion echoed across the empty streets, loud enough to be heard from orbit. Enemy forces halted in confusion, scanning for a squad that did not exist. There was only one human. Elias moved constantly, never staying long enough to be targeted. He used shadows, collapsed buildings, and broken terrain with quiet skill. Every shot mattered. Every movement was deliberate. He fought like someone who had already accepted his fate. High above the battlefield, an alien flagship observed the chaos below. Princess Salith of the Viral Dominion stood before the viewing screen, her posture rigid with disbelief. The invasion of Karath had been routine, almost boring. Resistance had collapsed days ago, and yet the advance had stalled. "All this," she said softly, "for one soldier." Her commanders exchanged uneasy glances. Sensors confirmed it, one human life sign, one. Salith studied the footage as it zoomed closer, watching Elias fight through smoke and falling debris. His movements were imperfect, strained, yet driven by something deeper than training. He was not fearless. He was determined. She felt something unfamiliar tighten in her chest. Viral culture respected strength, but strength was measured in conquest and command. This was different. This human stood alone against impossible odds, not to win glory, but to protect strangers who would never know his name. "Why does he not flee?" she asked. "He cannot," a commander replied. "If he leaves, our forces advance." Salith's eyes did not leave the screen. Elias staggered briefly, catching himself against a wall before raising his weapon again. Blood ran from beneath his armor, dark against the dust-covered ground. He should have fallen, anyone else would have. Yet he did not. A viral strike team descended nearby, surrounding Elias from 3 directions. Salith expected surrender, or at least collapse. Instead, the human straightened, breathing slow and controlled, and stepped forward to meet them. In that moment, Salith made a decision that shocked even herself. She ordered the strike team to halt. The battlefield froze, weapons aimed but silent. Elias looked around, confused but unafraid. He did not lower his weapon. He simply waited as if the universe itself had paused to consider him. Salith felt the weight of tradition pressing against her thoughts. Humans were considered fragile, short-lived, and unremarkable, yet this one had halted an invasion alone. "Mark him," she said quietly. "That human is mine." Her officers stared at her uncertain. Claiming a warrior without defeating him was unheard of. Claiming an enemy was even worse. But Salith did not care. She was not watching an enemy anymore. She was witnessing resolve given flesh, courage shaped by loss, and defiance refined into something almost sacred. Below, Elias stood amid enemies who no longer advanced, unaware that his final stand had become something else entirely. He had fought alone, expecting only death. Instead, he had been seen. And in the eyes of an alien princess, one human had become worth more than a world. Silence on a battlefield was never peaceful. Elias felt it pressing against his ears, heavy and unnatural, as the enemy weapons remained trained on him but did not fire. Smoke drifted slowly around broken towers, and ash fell like tired snow. He did not lower his rifle. Years of war had taught him that hesitation killed faster than bullets. If this was a trick, he would meet it standing. If this was the end, then it would be no different from what he had already accepted. Above him, a shadow crossed the ruined street. A viral descent platform lowered itself with controlled grace, its surface glowing with soft blue light. It landed without force, untouched by the destruction around it. From it stepped figures taller than humans, their armor smooth and ceremonial rather than brutal. At their center walked Princess Salith. Elias had seen many alien commanders before. Most wore cruelty openly, as if it were proof of authority. Salith did not. Her face was calm, almost solemn, her eyes sharp with thought rather than hunger. She approached without fear, ignoring the warnings of her guards. Elias felt a strange urge to laugh. After everything, it was not death that came for him, but curiosity. "You are injured," Salith said, her voice translated softly through the air. There was no mockery in it, only observation. "So are your plans," Elias replied, his voice rough but steady. The guards tensed, but Salith raised a hand. She looked at him closely now, noticing the way his armor barely held together, the tremor he hid behind stillness, the exhaustion etched into his face. "You stood alone," she said. "Not because you were ordered to, not because you would be rewarded." Elias said nothing. Words felt useless. He had learned that explaining sacrifice to those who never needed to make one was a waste of breath. Salith took another step closer. "In my people's history," she continued, "a warrior who holds a line alone is considered touched by fate. Such a one is not taken as a prisoner. They are claimed." The word echoed strangely in the ruined street. Elias frowned. "I don't belong to anyone." A flicker of something crossed Salith's expression. Respect, perhaps, or understanding. "Neither did I," she said quietly. With a single gesture, she ordered her forces to withdraw from the immediate sector. Dropships lifted. Walkers powered down. The battlefield did not return to peace, but it breathed again. Elias finally lowered his rifle, not in surrender, but in exhaustion. His legs gave way, and he fell to one knee. Pain rushed in the moment the fight left him. Salith moved quickly, catching him before he collapsed fully. Her grip was firm, not gentle, but not cruel. "Do not mistake this," she said, supporting his weight. "I did not stop the war." "Never thought you would," Elias muttered. She allowed herself the smallest smile. He was taken aboard the flagship, not in chains, but under guard. Medical drones worked silently on his wounds, sealing flesh and stabilizing bone. Elias drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only that for the first time in years, no one was trying to kill him. When he awoke, he was alone in a chamber overlooking the stars. The room was clean, almost serene, filled with soft light and unfamiliar symbols. His armor had been removed, replaced with simple garments meant for healing, not display. His weapons were gone, yet he did not feel helpless. Moments later, Salith entered. She stood without armor now, appearing less like a commander and more like someone carrying a heavy burden. She dismissed the guards with a glance and sat across from him, leaving space between them. "I have claimed you," she said plainly, "not as property, as proof." Elias looked at her, confused. "Proof of what?" "That courage does not belong to empires," she replied. "That strength is not measured by numbers." Outside the viewing window, fleets gathered, preparing for battles yet to come. The war was far from over. Elias knew that better than anyone. "You saved people today," Salith continued. "Not by winning, but by refusing to break." Elias exhaled slowly. "I didn't do it for you." "I know," she said. "That is why it matters." For the first time since the war had taken everything from him, Elias felt something unfamiliar stir inside his chest. Not hope, not trust, But possibility. He had fought alone, believing himself forgotten. Now an entire empire had paused because of him. And somewhere between the stars and the scars, a bond had begun, fragile, dangerous, and powerful enough to change the course of war. Elias did not adjust easily to silence. The flagship moved through space with quiet confidence, its hulls smooth and curved, free of the sharp edges and alarms he associated with war. To him, the calm felt unnatural, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. He was given time to heal, though healing was not something he trusted. His body improved faster than his mind. Every closed door felt like a trap. Every unfamiliar sound pulled him halfway to his feet. Salith watched him from a distance at first. She had expected anger, fear, or demands for freedom. Instead, she saw patience worn thin by loss. Elias spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight, shaped by experience rather than opinion. One cycle later, she invited him to walk the observation corridor. Stars stretched endlessly beyond the transparent wall, cold and beautiful. Elias rested his hand against the surface, feeling nothing where heat and vibration should have been. "This is where you decide what to do with me," he said. Salith stood beside him, her gaze forward. "This is where I decide what to do with myself." She explained the truth then. The viral dominion was powerful but divided. Many worlds followed out of fear, not loyalty. The war against humanity was meant to unify them through conquest. "It has failed," she said, "because of you." Elias turned to her slowly. "I didn't win anything." "You drew a line," Salith replied, "and my people saw it. Not all of them approved." In the lower command chambers, generals argued openly. Some demanded Elias be executed as a symbol. Others feared him as an omen. To them, one human disrupting a campaign was not inspiring. It was dangerous. Their pressure reached Salith quickly. That same cycle, an attack came. Not from humanity, but from within the Dominion. Saboteurs breached the flagship's inner ring, disabling shields and cutting power to several decks. Chaos spread through the ship, alarms finally breaking the silence Elias had come to distrust. He reacted instantly. Without weapons or armor, Elias moved toward the noise. He did not think in terms of sides or politics. Someone was in danger, and that was enough. He found Salith in the command hall, surrounded by guards and flickering displays. Her calm had not broken, but her eyes hardened when she saw him. "You should be secured," she said. "So should you," he replied, scanning the room. The saboteurs struck fast, emerging from hidden panels with energy blades and shock rifles. Guards fell, surprised by the betrayal. Elias acted without hesitation. He disarmed one attacker, using momentum and proximity, turning borrowed strength into a weapon. Another fell when Elias slammed them into a console, sparks flying as systems failed. He was human, they were stronger, but he was faster in the moments that mattered. Salith watched him fight, not with all this time, but with understanding. This was not rage or glory driving him, it was responsibility. When the last saboteur fell, the command hall lay in ruins. Smoke filled the air, and emergency lights painted everything red. Elias leaned against a console, breathing hard. "You don't have to protect me," Salith said quietly. He met her gaze. "I wasn't protecting you, I was protecting what you're trying to do." That night, the Dominion fractured further. News spread quickly. A human had defended the princess against her own people. Some saw it as proof of treachery. Others saw loyalty stronger than blood or species. Salith made her stand. In a broadcast sent across the fleet, she appeared without symbols of rank or conquest. Elias stood beside her, unarmed and unbowed. "This war was built on fear," she said, "and fear has failed us." She did not ask Elias to speak. She did not need to. His presence said enough. Some ships broke formation. Others powered down their weapons. A few, loyal to old ways, fled into deep space. The Dominion did not collapse. It changed. Later, alone again by the stars, Salith spoke softly. "You could leave," she said. "I will not stop you." Elias considered the endless darkness beyond the glass. "For the first time," he said, "someone drew a line with me." He stayed, not because he was claimed, but because he chose to stand where the line had been drawn, in starlight, beside someone willing to change the shape of the war. And far away, both human and alien forces felt it. Something fundamental had shifted. One human had fought alone. Now the universe was watching what he would fight for next. Days passed aboard the flagship in a rhythm both alien and unfamiliar. Elias learned quickly that trust could be as dangerous as combat. Every glance carried weight, every gesture could be misread. Yet, despite the tension, he felt the first threads of something he hadn't known in years: companionship. Salith did not push him. She gave him space, watched him, and allowed him to test the limits of the ship. He explored decks full of humming engines, empty observation lounges, and corridors lined with strange symbols. Everywhere he went, he left fingerprints, a reminder that he existed not just as a soldier, but as a human. One afternoon, an alarm blared, a signal different from the recent sabotage. Civilian transports fleeing systems far beyond the Dominion's reach were under attack. Without hesitation, Elias moved toward the command bridge, his steps measured but urgent. Salith followed, calm yet alert. "They are countless," she said. "Our fleet can barely cover them all." "Then I'll start with the closest," Elias replied, voice steady, eyes cold with resolve. He boarded a small assault shuttle with minimal crew. Salith watched him from the flagship, hand pressed to the transparent view panel. His figure was small against the vastness of space, yet his presence commanded attention, defiance, and hope all at once. Elias fought through waves of attackers with precision born of necessity. His body was pushed beyond exhaustion, yet his mind remained sharp. He maneuvered, struck, and protected the transports in a way that seemed almost impossible for a single human. Each civilian ship that escaped was a silent testament to his relentless courage. Back on the flagship, Salith did not leave the observation deck. She felt each strike, each dodge, each calculated move as if it were hers. When Elias landed back aboard, bloodied and bruised but alive, she approached him without hesitation. "You cannot keep doing this alone," she said. "I am not alone," he replied, shaking his head. "I fight because someone must." "You could be more than someone," she whispered, her gaze lingering on his. "You could lead." Elias laughed softly, a dry sound. "I don't want command, I just want to stop people from dying." Salith considered his words. Humanity, she realized, carried a value beyond power, beyond numbers. This human fought not for glory, not for rank, but because it was right. In his defiance, she saw something her people rarely understood: morality in motion. Days later, a small delegation from a rebellious Dominion world arrived. They came to negotiate, but fear and old loyalties held them back. Salith introduced Elias to them. His presence alone, unbowed and steadfast, shifted the room. Conversations that had seemed impossible became tentative agreements. Afterward, Elias stood at the edge of the observation corridor, staring at distant stars. Salith joined him silently. "You change things just by being here," she said softly. "I don't want to change anyone," he murmured. "I just want to do what's right." She placed her hand lightly on his shoulder. Sometimes, right is enough to change everything. For the first time, Elias allowed himself to believe that perhaps the war was not endless. Perhaps courage, even from one human, could tilt the balance. And in that quiet moment, amid the hum of engines and the glow of distant suns, trust began to grow between two beings from different worlds. Not forced, not commanded, but earned. The galaxy remained vast and dangerous, but Elias no longer fought in shadow alone. And somewhere deep in the corridors of his heart, a fragile hope took root, a hope that he and Salith could face the fire together. The Dominion was no longer whole. Factions whispered, fleets shifted, and whispers of rebellion stirred among worlds that once bowed without question. Elias moved through the flagship with quiet purpose, aware that his presence had become a symbol, even if he never sought it. Every step carried weight he did not fully understand. Salith had grown closer to him in ways subtle and profound. She no longer saw him as a soldier or a prize. She saw him as a force that could not be tamed, a mind that challenged her own, and a heart that refused to yield. Sometimes she caught herself studying his movements, the careful precision in every action, the way exhaustion never dulled his focus. A warning came one cycle later. An entire sector of civilian colonies was under siege. Raiders, loyal only to chaos and destruction, moved faster than any Dominion fleet could respond. Salith considered sending ships, but Elias interrupted her before she could decide. "I go," he said simply. "You cannot do this alone," she protested. I must," he replied. His voice was firm, carrying the weight of someone who had long ago made peace with danger. "If I hesitate, they die." She studied him for a long moment. Then, instead of arguing, she handed him a small data module. "This contains everything you need to find them. I am trusting you." Elias took it, understanding the depth of that trust without words. He boarded a scout cruiser and launched into the black expanse, navigating through asteroid belts and debris fields with uncanny skill. Every maneuver seemed impossible to anyone else, yet he made it look effortless, driven by something beyond calculation, intuition, and sheer will. He arrived at the colonies to find devastation, smoke rising from shattered domes and fires flickering under the twin suns. Families ran in panic, children clinging to their parents. Raiders struck swiftly, confident that no one could oppose them. But Elias was there. Alone, unarmed in some ways, yet armed with determination and experience, he became a whirlwind in their midst. He toppled vehicles, deflected attacks, and guided civilians to safety. Each action was precise, deliberate, and full of life. Hours later, the last raider fled into the void, and the colonies breathed again. Exhausted, Elias fell to his knees, looking at the destruction and the survivors alike. Relief washed over him, tempered by the bitter knowledge that war had no end. When he returned to the flagship, Salith was waiting. She did not need to ask if he had succeeded. The moment he stepped aboard, she knew. "You risked everything," she said softly, voice steady, but eyes reflecting deep concern. "I know," Elias admitted, "and I would do it again." "You are human," she whispered, almost to herself, "and yet you carry a weight none of my people could bear." He looked at her, exhaustion plain on his face, yet something in his gaze sparked determination. "I fight because it is right, not for glory, not for recognition." Salith nodded. For the first time, she understood fully the depth of human resilience. It was not measured in weapons, ships, or empires. It was measured in courage, in moral defiance, in the refusal to abandon those who could not defend themselves. That night, they stood together in the observation deck, staring at the distant stars. Elias was silent, but Salith felt the resolve emanating from him like fire. "Sometimes," she said softly, "I wonder if you realize what you do to people, human, how you make us question everything we know." He smiled faintly, the first genuine expression since she had claimed him. "I just fight," he said. The rest comes naturally." And for the first time, Salith allowed herself to hope, not for victory, not for conquest, but for something far more fragile and powerful. Trust, shared between two beings from different worlds, standing on the edge of defiance against the universe itself. In that quiet moment, the war continued beyond their walls. But within the flagship, something unbreakable began to grow. A bond forged in fire, battle, and the sheer impossibility of one human standing alone. The galaxy was restless. Reports came faster now, rebellious fleets clashing with Dominion forces, colonies declaring independence, and whispers of hope spreading among the oppressed. Elias moved through the flagship like a shadow with purpose, his presence felt but not intrusive. Wherever he went, people watched him, not out of fear, but out of awe. Salith observed him constantly, noting small details. The way he examined maps with careful attention, the subtle flinch when a door creaked unexpectedly, the tense way his fingers flexed even when relaxed. She had seen warriors before, but Elias carried not just skill, but weight. The weight of responsibility, of choice, and of survival. One cycle later, an urgent transmission arrived. A Dominion fleet loyal to traditional command was moving to reclaim the rebellious colonies Elias had saved. Their flagship, massive and bristling with weapons, would arrive in mere hours. "We cannot outgun them," Salith said, watching the data stream. "Even with our fleet, it will be a slaughter." Elias stood silently, his jaw tight. He had no ships to command, no grand strategy to deploy, yet he did not hesitate. "Then we fight differently," he said. "We give them something they cannot expect. We fight as one human against the impossible." Salith blinked, unsure if he meant defiance or desperation. But she trusted him. By now, she had seen him act against overwhelming odds, and somehow he always survived. The battle commenced with chaos. The Loyalist fleet unleashed energy barrages and squadrons of fighters, expecting the Dominion to crumble under sheer force. But Elias led a small, mobile strike team in ways that seemed almost impossible, predicting enemy movements with uncanny intuition. His orders were simple, direct, and executed flawlessly. During a particularly dangerous maneuver, one of the Dominion cruisers took a direct hit. Elias had to guide survivors through flaming corridors, debris falling around him, the air thick with smoke and warning alarms. Yet he remained calm, steady, and focused. He moved with the certainty of someone who had faced death countless times and refused to yield. Salith monitored everything from the flagship's command deck. She saw him dive into the heart of danger repeatedly, pulling soldiers and civilians to safety with unyielding precision. She realized then that this was not bravery in the way her people understood it. This was a deeper force, a refusal to let fear dictate action, a willingness to bear the burden of responsibility alone if necessary. Hours passed. The Loyalist fleet faltered, unable to anticipate the humans' unpredictable tactics. Elias had turned the tide without a single victory declared, without a single self-serving act. He fought for others, and that made him unstoppable. When the dust settled, the battlefield was quiet. The Loyalists retreated, broken and bewildered. The colonies remained free. Elias stood amidst the aftermath, battered but alive, his armor scorched and his body bruised. He looked at Salith as she approached him, her expression a mixture of relief, respect, and something more tender. "You are reckless," she said softly, almost scolding him. "Do you know how much you could have lost?" "I know," he replied, voice steady. "And I chose to risk it anyway. Someone has to." For the first time, Salith saw the full magnitude of what humans carried inside them. Not strength measured by technology or numbers, but by heart, will, and moral courage. Elias did not fight because he was compelled. He fought because he had chosen every time to stand for what was right. Later, they stood together on the observation deck, watching the stars drift silently by. Salith did not touch him, did not speak. She merely stood, feeling the echo of his choices, the pulse of his courage, and the undeniable gravity he carried. Elias turned to her quietly. "I don't know if this will ever end," he said. She studied him, the fire of battle still lingering in his eyes. "It may not," she admitted, "but we will face it together." And in that silence, among the hum of engines and the cold glow of distant suns, a bond deeper than war or loyalty was forged. A bond born of respect, survival, and the simple truth that one human, standing alone, could change the course of countless lives. The universe beyond waited with uncertainty, but within the flagship, trust, courage, and defiance burned brighter than any star. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Across countless systems, whispers of the lone human who defied empires spread like wildfire. Elias had become more than a soldier, more than a survivor. He had become a symbol, not of conquest, but of what it meant to stand when all seemed lost. Salith watched him from the bridge, her gaze tracing the scars along his arms, the lines of exhaustion etched into his face, the quiet intensity that never wavered. She did not need to claim him now. He belonged not to her or anyone else. His presence commanded respect, admiration, and a quiet awe that transcended species and allegiance. An urgent signal arrived. Another rebellion threatened by Dominion loyalists, this time larger, better armed. Fleet commanders debated strategies, offering complex plans and careful calculations. Elias listened quietly, then shook his head. "We don't have time for plans that take days to execute. We move now, precise and fast." The fleet hesitated. Humans were unpredictable. Aliens followed protocol. Elias ignored protocol entirely. Salith gave him the nod, a silent acknowledgement that whatever he chose to do would be supported. He led a strike force smaller than anyone thought possible, darting through asteroid fields and enemy lines, appearing where the Loyalists expected nothing. He coordinated rescues, guided ships, and engaged in combat personally, his body and mind moving with a rhythm honed by years of endless conflict. As the battle reached its peak, a massive Loyalist dreadnought targeted the colonies directly. Elias maneuvered his shuttle with impossible precision, dodging volleys and guiding evacuation pods safely away. He struck at weak points no one else saw, dismantling the dreadnought from the inside while the fleet engaged it externally. Hours passed in a blur of motion, fire, and chaos. When the dust settled, the colonies were intact. The Loyalists were in retreat, their morale shattered by a human who refused to bend, break, or compromise his purpose. Elias returned to the flagship, bloodied, exhausted, but alive. Salith approached him quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Do you realize what you've done?" she asked softly. "I just fought," he replied, voice hoarse but steady. "I didn't do it for glory, I did it because it had to be done." Salith smiled, a mixture of pride and admiration. "And yet, because of you, empires have changed, planets have been saved. You've done more than anyone could have imagined." For the first time, Elias allowed himself a moment of reflection. He had always thought of himself as small, insignificant, a single human in a vast universe. Yet here he stood, not merely surviving but shaping history. "Humans," Salith said quietly, almost to herself, "they are never ordinary, not even one of them." He looked at her, faintly smiling. "I guess it takes someone to see it to believe it." Together they gazed out at the stars, silent witnesses to a universe that had shifted in ways no one had foreseen. The war was far from over, but hope, courage, and defiance now had a face. A human who had fought alone, yet became the spark that ignited change across worlds. In the eyes of the Dominion, in the hearts of the oppressed, and even in distant stars, the legend of Elias Ward was born. A human who defied odds, who refused to yield, and who reminded everyone that one life, one choice, could matter more than entire fleets. Salith whispered to herself, a vow unspoken yet unbreakable. "He is mine, not to own, but to honor." And somewhere between the stars and the scars, between battlefields and hope, one human had become more than a soldier. He had become a legend. The universe would never forget him.